Do you think this life belongs to you? Do you actually believe, for even a fleeting moment, that you wake up in the morning by your own power? That breath is yours, that time is yours, that the ticking of the clock belongs to you, and you can spend it as you wish like a merchant flipping coins in the marketplace. Who told you that lie? Who whispered that poison in your ear? Because there is a great deception at work. A deception so subtle, so deeply rooted in pride and self-glory, that it has soaked into the bones of our generation like rot into old wood. You wake up, and the first thoughts in your mind are about what you want. What you'll eat, what you'll wear, what you'll accomplish, what you'll post, who will notice you, who will praise you, who will envy you. Do you not see, have you not discerned that you were not made for self? That every heartbeat, every breath, every rising of the sun is not yours to control, but rather a summons, a divine invitation to yield, to submit, to live not by your own agenda, but by one far greater than you could ever author. This is not about success. This is not about dreams. This is not about getting everything you want. This is about surrender. This is about laying your day on the altar before it even begins, before the coffee, before the phone, before the meeting, before the gym, before the grind. You lay it down. You say, not my will. You say, not my plans. You say, let the greater hand write the story of this day. And you do not say it with a casual tongue. You say it with trembling. You say it with urgency. Because if you walk into the battlefield of this day without surrender, you walk into war unarmed. You walk into darkness blind. You walk into temptation unguarded. And the cost? It may not show up in the headlines of your life, but it will leak like acid into your soul. Little compromises, little justifications, little deviations that eventually bend the course of your life away from the narrow path. You are not called to live for your comfort. You were not called to design your perfect day. You were not called to chase success, applause, reputation, or pleasure. You were called to die. Yes, die not in the physical sense, though that day will come for us all, but die to self. Die to your will, die to your ambitions, and in that death find life, real life, life that cannot be shaken by the news, life that cannot be hijacked by the traffic, or the boss, or the unexpected phone call. Do you realize how fragile you are? One diagnosis, one accident, one breath slipping out and not returning, and yet we walk around as though we are invincible kings of our calendars, sovereigns over our schedules. Foolishness, utter foolishness. We build our days as if the foundation is unshakable, but it is not. The only thing unshakable is that which has been anchored beyond the veil, that which is rooted in eternity, not in time. That's why every morning must begin with surrender. Not a fleeting whisper, not a token gesture, but a full laying down, a tearing up of the plans, a bending of the knee before the day begins. And if you don't, you risk building something that will be swept away like sand when the storm comes, because the storm will come, the winds will rise, the waters will rise, and your carefully planned day will collapse if it is not anchored to the rock. But you say, I have plans, I have responsibilities. I can't just sit and wait for some invisible direction. No, you misunderstand. This is not passivity. This is not apathy. This is not a refusal to act. This is the most radical form of action. There is yielding, trusting, listening, being still long enough to be led, rather than charging ahead under the banner of your own name. Do not think this is weakness. The world will tell you to take control. The world will tell you to be the master of your fate. But the world is blind, and the world is perishing. Do you want the counsel of the perishing to guide your day? Do you want the noise of fools to shape your destiny? Or will you listen to the voice that calls in the silence, the voice that shaped the stars and speaks still today? You must fight, not with others, not with the world, but with yourself. You must wrestle your will to the ground. You must crucify the fleshly desire to be your own Lord. You must drag your selfishness to the altar again and again and again until it dies. And even then you'll feel it twitching, rising, scheming to take back the throne of your day. But you do not let it. You do not compromise. You do not flirt with autonomy. You kill it, because autonomy is a lie. You are not your own. You never were. You were bought with a price, a heavy price, a blood price, and to live today as if that purchase was irrelevant is blasphemy. Yes, I said it. It is blasphemy. It is to spit on the sacrifice and say, "That was good for yesterday, but today is mine." No, today is not yours. The very minutes ticking by are gifts, not rights. And how you spend them, how you steward them, will echo beyond this life. You will give an account for the words, for the motive, for the way you spent the hours no one else saw, for the compromises you justified because you were tired, because you were angry, because you were disappointed. Do not think hidden sin is forgotten sin. Do not think negligence in the quiet places is invisible to the one who sees all. If you do not give this day over, you will be given over to confusion, to vanity, to aimlessness, to sin that hardens you, numbs you, deadens you, until you don't even notice anymore that your life is drifting like a ship without anchor, until one day you wake up and ask, "How did I get here?" And the answer will be, one unsurrendered day at a time. You think it's harmless to keep control. You think it's noble to run your day by your own intellect. Look at the fruit. Look at your restlessness. Look at your anxiety. Look at your craving for validation. Look at your endless scrolling, your endless distractions, your endless discontent. These are not random symptoms. These are warning signs. These are alarm bells. The soul is crying out under the weight of self-lordship. And the longer you ignore the cry, the harder it becomes to hear the call to come back. You need to die to your day every morning, not just when life falls apart, not just when you feel spiritual, every morning. When you're tired, when you're late, when you're angry, when you're afraid, that's when it matters most, when it costs something, when it's not convenient. And hear me, this is not a game. This is not motivational fluff. This is war. There are forces at work you cannot see. There are schemes against you that do not sleep. You are not stepping into a neutral world. You are stepping into a battlefield. And if you do not let go of your day, truly let go, you will not stand. You may succeed in the eyes of men. You may build your brand. You may climb the ladder, but your soul will wither. Your fire will fade. And one day you will realize you built an empire of ash. But if you let go, if you surrender, if you open your hands and release the day into the hands of the one who holds eternity, then everything changes. Not necessarily your circumstances, not necessarily your trials, but your foundation, your peace, your perspective. You walk differently, you speak differently, you think differently, because you know this day is not an accident. This day is not wasted. This day is not owned by you, and that's the best news of all. Because you are not wise enough to run your life. You are not strong enough to carry your burdens. You are not pure enough to guide your own heart. You are a creature, not the Creator. And when you embrace that, when you bow before that reality, there is power. There is freedom. There is joy not rooted in circumstances, but in surrender. So I ask you, will you release this day? Will you hand over your plans, your fears, your ambitions, your calendar? Will you trust enough to let go? It may not feel natural. It may go against everything you've been taught. It may feel like weakness, but it is strength. It is the only way to live, the only way to have peace that the world cannot understand. The only way to walk through the fire and not be burned. The only way to look at the waves and not sink. And if you hesitate, if you delay, you play a dangerous game. You flirt with ruin. You toy with disaster. Because the cost of pride is always destruction. And pride is exactly every day must begin with a wholehearted surrender, not a casual acknowledgement, but a radical yielding of your will, plans, desires, and agenda. Without this surrender, your day is built on sand, vulnerable to distraction, temptation, and spiritual drift. Control is an illusion. You were never meant to direct your own life. The attempt to do so leads to anxiety, emptiness, and eventual ruin. True peace and purpose come only when the day is entrusted fully to the one who holds eternity. There is a lie that has saturated our generation, and it is this, that you can live your life by your own strength, chart your course by your own wisdom, and fulfill your purpose by your own ambition. That somehow, with enough strategy, enough motivation, enough self-help, you will arrive at peace, joy, and meaning. But that lie is from the pit of hell. It flatters the flesh, it feeds the ego, and it kills the soul. Surrender is not optional. It is not a suggestion for the hyper, religious, or the emotionally dependent. It is not for the weak-willed, or the overly sensitive. It is the only posture fit for a person who has seen the truth about who they are and who they are not. Surrender is the rational response of someone who has glimpsed the terrifying weight of their own insufficiency. Do you understand what that means? It means the minute you wake up, you are already not enough. You are not wise enough to know what decisions to make today. You are not strong enough to carry what today will place upon your shoulders. You are not holy enough to resist the temptations that will come knocking, disguised as pleasure, flattery, or convenience. You are not discerning enough to see all the traps laid in your path. And if you try to walk through your day in your own strength, in your own planning, in your own cleverness, you will fall. You may not notice it at first. You may even think things are going well, but your soul will begin to wither, your sensitivity will dull, your hunger for the eternal will fade, and you will become what the world loves: efficient, productive, confident, and utterly empty. That is why surrender cannot wait until the storm comes. It cannot be your last resort. It cannot be the emergency exit when your plans collapse. It must be your first breath, your first thought, before the phone, before the mirror, before the meetings, before the noise. There must be silence, there must be brokenness, there must be a reckoning with your desperate need. There must be a bowing of the knee, not just in posture, but in the deepest chambers of the heart. But the heart fights this. The flesh hates surrender, it recoils. It whispers, you're doing fine, you've got this, you've been through worse, don't be so dramatic. And yet that voice is a thief. It steals the very thing your soul needs most: dependency. It robs you of the only strength that lasts, and so you walk into your day half-armed, half-awake, and you wonder why the peace doesn't last, why the clarity disappears, why the fire fades. You must surrender. Not vaguely, not generally, but specifically, thoroughly. You must look at your plans and say, these are not mine. You must look at your goals and say, these are subject to change. You must look at your schedule, your deadlines, your reputation, your comfort, your time, and say, all of this is yours. Do with it what you will. And some will say, that's irresponsible, that's impractical. I can't live like that in the real world. But that is exactly the problem. Too many people are more comfortable living in the real world of their own making than in the eternal reality that defines everything. You do not lose responsibility by surrendering. You find it. You do not become passive. You become precise, purposeful, aligned with a will that never errs. Do you want to know why there is so much confusion in your life, so much internal noise, so much instability. It is not because of your environment. It is not because of your boss, your spouse, your finances, or your past. It is because the throne of your heart is still crowded. You have not cleared it. You have not made room. You have tried to fit divine will into a day already filled with your own, and it doesn't work. It cannot work. A man cannot serve two masters. He will love one and hate the other. And yet many try to walk the line, serving self in the morning and seeking guidance when trouble strikes in the evening. This is not surrender. This is manipulation. It is using the divine like a consultant rather than a king. It is making yourself sovereign over the parts you want to control and giving up the rest only when you fail. And so what happens? You get worn down, you get tired, you get spiritually numb because you're trying to live out of faith that costs you nothing. You're trying to hold on to your autonomy while still hoping for divine blessing. But that's not how it works. Surrender is all or nothing. You do not partially die to self. You crucify the whole thing. You drag it to the cross and leave it there, not just once, but every day. That's why surrender must be daily, because self doesn't stay dead. It rises, it sneaks back in, it schemes, it flatters, it whispers, just this once, just a little control, just one part of the day. And if you do not daily put it to death, it will take over, slowly, quietly, until you are living for yourself again, but calling it faith. You must surrender when it's easy and when it's not. You must surrender when the day ahead looks manageable and when it looks impossible. Because surrender is not based on emotion, it is based on reality, and the reality is that you are dependent. Every breath, every heartbeat, every clear thought, every victory, every escape from temptation, every word of encouragement you speak, it is all grace, all a gift. And if you forget that, you begin to believe the lie that you are the source. Look at your past. Look at the times you've walked in peace and joy, even when everything around you was chaos. Was it your planning? Was it your intelligence? Or was it that somehow, without your orchestrating it, your heart was surrendered? And look at the other side, the days when everything went right. And yet you were restless, anxious, distracted. Why? Because surrender wasn't there. You had everything under control and you had nothing. You don't need more motivation. You don't need another productivity system. You need to lay down your pride. You need to stop pretending that you can do this, because the one who thinks they can manage without surrender is already deceived, already blind, already being led by the flesh. The flesh doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need to shout. It's content to let you live a decent, moral, respectable life as long as you don't surrender, because it knows that's where the power is. That's where the transformation is. That's where intimacy begins. The flesh can survive religion. It can survive routine. It cannot survive surrender, because surrender is violent. It is not peaceful. It is not poetic. It is a battlefield. It is the slaughtering of pride, the decapitation of ego, the burning of false security, and no one comes to it lightly. No one surrenders daily unless they are convinced that self-rule leads to ruin, unless they have seen the consequences of one day lived in their own strength. This is why you must remember, you must recall your failures, not to dwell in shame, but to awaken desperation, to stir up holy urgency, because without desperation there is no surrender. Without seeing your need, you will never fall on your knees, and that is the tragedy of many people today. They have not fallen, not truly, not in heart. They may attend services, they may give, serve, speak the right words, but inside they still believe they're doing okay, that they're a good person, that they're handling life, and so they never surrender. They never fall, they never come empty, and that's the only way to come empty, desperate, honest, saying, I cannot do this. I do not know what's best. I am not strong enough. I surrender this day. I surrender this hour. I surrender this breath. When that is the posture, everything changes. Not because the day suddenly becomes easy, not because every problem is solved, but because the soul is aligned, the heart is anchored, the direction is set, and in that place, storms can rage and peace remains. Plans can fail and hope stands. Temptation can strike and purity holds. But do not forget, this must be daily. Yesterday's surrender will not carry you through today. Yesterday's grace was for yesterday's battles. Today must have its own dying, its own bowing, its own yielding. The manna that fed the people in the desert could not be stored. It rotted when kept. Why? Because dependency must be constant. So it is now. You cannot live today off yesterday's devotion. You need fresh surrender, and if you've gone days, weeks without it, you must not excuse it. You must repent. You must fall again. You must cry out again. You must return to the place where you were emptied and filled, not because it earns anything, but because it is the only way to live, the only way to walk, the only way to stand. The most dangerous place for any person is not in hardship, not in weakness, not in suffering. The most dangerous place is in self-reliance, in thinking they've matured past the need to surrender, in believing that they've grown beyond desperation, that they can now manage their day like a professional. You rise in the morning and your feet touch the floor. The first breath draws into your lungs, your eyes adjust to the light, and your mind begins to churn with the thoughts of what lies ahead, appointments, responsibilities, goals, conversations, expectations. And before a word is spoken, you assume authority, you assume the day belongs to you. You plan, you decide, you calculate, you prepare as if you were sovereign, as if you held the universe in your hand. As if your next heartbeat were guaranteed. That is the delusion, that is the deception, that you are in control. You are not the master of your day. You never have been. You never will be. This is not a poetic idea or a spiritual metaphor. This is reality. You don't own the seconds you're given. You don't hold the air in your lungs. You don't write the timeline of your life. You don't determine what will come in the next hour or the next minute. Your life is not your own. Your time is not your own. Your body, your mind, your very breath, it is all borrowed. And yet, how often do you live as if this is not true? How often do you wake up with the silent belief that you're entitled to another day, that this is your schedule, your world, your life? How often do you clench your fists around your plans, your preferences, your comforts? You take the hours and divide them according to your desires. You move through the day like a ruler over a tiny kingdom, believing it is yours to build, yours to protect, yours to direct. But that kingdom is made of sand, and one gust of wind, one moment of loss, one diagnosis, one accident, one disruption is all it takes to shatter the illusion. You don't have to be reminded that life is fragile. You know this, you've seen it, you've felt it. You've watched dreams crumble and days turn dark without warning, and yet still, your heart wants control. Still, your flesh says, plan harder, try again, be more efficient, take back the reins. But what if the lesson is not to try harder? What if the lesson is to surrender deeper, to stop pretending, to stop playing God over your own life? There is a pride that runs through every human heart, a deep-rooted pride that resists dependency, that chafes against submission, that recoils at the thought of not being in control. This pride wears many faces. Sometimes it looks like ambition. Sometimes it looks like discipline. Sometimes it even disguises itself as wisdom. But underneath it all is a quiet refusal to admit the truth, that we are not in charge, that we are not the ones guiding the ship, that we are not sovereign. You are not the master of your day. You can wake up with plans, and those plans can be shattered before the sun finishes rising. You can map out every hour and find by noon that none of it matters anymore. The call comes, the door opens, the news drops, the body fails, the job shifts, the person leaves, the storm hits, and suddenly all your well-ordered thoughts are gone, and you are reminded painfully, urgently, that you are not in control. But how tragic it is that we must be broken to be awakened. How tragic that we wait for the storm to realize we're not the ones who command the wind. Shouldn't the breath in our lungs be enough to humble us? Shouldn't the rising of the sun, the turning of the earth, the beating of the heart, all of which we did nothing to secure, be enough to bring us to our knees in awe and surrender? Yet we forget. We live by illusion. We live in the shallow pool of self-importance, as if our tiny plans are the axis of reality, as if what we have written in our notebooks and stored on our calendars cannot be shaken. But they can, they will. Because nothing in this life is yours to master. You are not in charge of who you will meet today. You are not in charge of what trials will come. You are not in charge of what joys will rise. You cannot predict the interruptions. You cannot hold off the suffering. You cannot force open the doors. You cannot stop the hands of the clock. And this truth is not meant to make you feel powerless in a cruel world. It is meant to bring you to the place of proper perspective, to the place of reverence and worship. Because when you see that you are not the master of your day, you begin to look to the one who is, and that changes everything. It shifts your posture. It humbles your plans. It opens your heart to be led, not to be the leader. But make no mistake, this shift will not come naturally. It will not happen because you heard it once. It must be fought for, because the flesh will rise every morning with a fresh sense of self-sovereignty. The flesh will whisper, "It's your day. Do what you want, chase what you love, demand what you deserve." And if you listen, you will walk in pride. You will walk in blindness. You will walk straight into traps, believing all the while that you're making progress. It's not about being lazy. It's not about sitting still and waiting for a voice from the clouds to tell you what to do. That's not what this surrender means. It's about walking through your day with hands open, not clenched. It's about holding your plans loosely. It's about starting your day by saying, "Interrupt me if you must, redirect me if you will, lead me where I would not have chosen." It's about choosing to trust that you are not the one who sees the whole picture, and that's a good thing. But this kind of trust isn't natural. It's birthed in the secret place, in prayer, in brokenness, in scripture, in silence. In the early hours, before the world demands your attention, you must go low. You must bow. You must confess again that this day is not yours, that your life is not your own, that you are not the center, because if you don't, you will rise in pride. You will run ahead. You will lean on your own understanding. And you will reap the fruit of self-will. And what is that fruit? Anxiety, fear, restlessness, disappointment, frustration, because deep down, you know you were never meant to carry it all. Deep down, your soul was created to follow, not to rule, to receive, not to take, to submit, not to command. Look at the world. Look at the chaos, the fear, the exhaustion. So much of it is rooted in the worship of self. Mastery, this endless drive to control what was never meant to be controlled. People are trying to orchestrate peace by grabbing tighter, planning more, managing every variable. But the more they clutch, the more they break. Because peace does not come from control. Peace comes from surrender. And you know this if you're honest. You felt it in those rare moments when you finally let go, when you finally said, "I can't do this," and something shifted inside you, not because your situation changed, but because you changed, your posture changed, your eyes looked up instead of in. your heart softened instead of hardened. That is where peace lives, not in mastery, but in trust, not in having all the answers, but in walking with the one who does, not in dictating your day, but in receiving it, receiving each moment as a gift, each breath as grace, each interruption as opportunity, each hardship as shaping. But you won't see it if you believe you're the master. You'll miss it all, you'll rush through the divine appointments, you'll curse the delays that were meant to protect you, you'll resent the trials that were meant to refine you. You'll be so busy forcing your will that you won't hear the gentle whisper calling you to something higher, something deeper, something eternal, and then the day ends, and you lie in bed, wondering why you're so tired, why you feel so distant, why the peace is gone, and maybe, if you're honest, you'll hear it, that still, small voice asking, who was on the throne today? Because that is the question, who ruled your day? Who set the pace? Who made the final call? Was it you? Or was it the one who gave you the day in the first place? You are not the master of your day. You do not hold the pen. You are a character, not the author. You are a servant, not the king, and until you live like it, you will continue to taste the bitterness of self-rule. There is freedom in letting go, real freedom, not laziness, not passivity, but the kind of freedom that breathes joy into suffering, purpose into pain, and rest into the chaos. The kind of freedom that knows, truly knows, that the one who formed the stars is forming this day too,